Discover the unexpected scrubbing secrets for senior women. 85% of diseases transformed forever. The winds howled as anonymous whispers, but inside Linda's heart, a cacophony of anxiety surged. At 68, she felt like a mere shadow drifting through the familiar streets of her small town, bereft of direction, after losing the anchor of her life, her husband. The crisp autumn leaves swirled dramatically around her as she made her way to the library, each rustle punctuating the void that echoed within her. What once brought her joy now felt mundane. Was anyone truly listening? Did anyone care? Days blurred together. Memories of laughter danced in her mind, threatening to engulf her in a tidal wave of loneliness. It was in that haze of despair that she found the box in the attic. Dust and neglect had concealed her grandmother's journals and handwritten recipes, a treasure trove that seemed even more alien after her life had turned upside down. The scrubbing secrets unraveled magic as she experimented with them, feeling a flicker of joy rekindle in her soul. But was it enough? She longed to feel valued again, not just as a relic of the past, but as a source of wisdom, someone who mattered. Convinced that her discoveries could usher in hope, she invited her peers at the senior center to join her on this newfound journey of health and vitality. Yet, the laughter she encountered hit her like an unexpected slap. Skepticism wore mocks. That old stuff echoed in her ears like taunts. The dismissive chuckles rang louder than the support she desperately craved. They saw her as an eccentric old lady, not worthy of their time. Their eyes revealed an unwillingness to entertain the teachings handed down through generations. Anguish tightened around her heart. Did she dare stand alone against the tide of indifference? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She organized small, intimate gatherings, the walls of her cozy home absorbing the whispers of her grandmother's stories, while the aroma of natural cleaning solutions filled the air. As the weeks passed, the core of her conviction began to resonate with a few. But just as hope flickered, a neighboring town's health scare drowned them all in a storm of doubt. Illnesses linked to home remedies swept in like dark clouds, a nervous tension gripping her community. Suddenly, she stood accused. Her credibility lay in the balance. Doubt clawed at her sanity as she paced in preparation for a confrontation at the local health department. Anxiety danced maliciously in her stomach, making her question her own beliefs. Would they laugh her out of the room? Would the warmth of connection and joy she had offered slip through her fingers, leaving only shadows of despair? Resolute in spite of the gnawing fear that threatened her, Linda stepped forward to face the officials. Her heart raced, not out of excitement, but sheer desperation. With each passing moment, she felt the weight of their scrutiny intensify, thick like fog. As she prepared to speak, the questions spiraled in her mind. Would they dismiss her, or could she capture their attention long enough to show them the truth? As the local health official raised an eyebrow, readying to shut her down, Linda's voice hung on the precipice of doubt. Would this truly be her moment of redemption? Or would she remain just a footnote lost in the pages of another forgotten story? The tension hung heavy in the sterile air, desperate and unyielding. Linda steadied her breath, drawing strength from the very traditions she cherished. The sterile, cold atmosphere of the room ignited a fire within her. This was her moment, not just to defend the legacy of her grandmother's wisdom, but to reclaim her own voice. "I know the words you're ready to dismiss," she began, her tone unwavering despite the tremor in her hands. "But I'm here to show you they're more than just memories. They're real tools that promote health, They aren't outdated relics, they're invaluable resources. As she spoke, Linda noticed faces in the audience shift, a flicker of curiosity igniting where skepticism had reigned. She pressed on, painting a vivid picture of how her grandmother had infused simple remedies with love, care, and peerless understanding of holistic health. Each word revitalized her purpose. She wasn't merely a voice of the past, she was an advocate for a healthier future. Inflammation, fear of disease, constant worry, these are the true threats to our lives. The scrubbing secrets I share don't just clean homes, they cleanse our bodies, she continued, harnessing the collective tension in the room. What if these remedies can combat some ailments? What if, instead of fear, we found strength together? With each passing moment, she could feel the weight of preconceptions shifting. Even the health official had lowered their brow, intrigued. Linda dared to share her own journey, how a myriad of ailments had begun to fade when she embraced the natural solutions. She presented herself not as a purveyor of forgotten wisdom, but as a living testament to its power. No recipe is a panacea, she cautioned, but maybe, just maybe, they can light our way. I'm not asking for blind faith, I'm asking for an open mind. The emotional pull within her words drew the audience closer and closer to her. Let's tackle chronic issues together. Let's harness our wisdom for our families. Let's learn again and rewrite our narratives. As she concluded, an unexpected hush filled the room. A tense silence lingered, each individual processing her words. Would they embrace her vision, or would she be cast aside, her passion extinguished like a flickering candle? One of the older gentlemen stood, shifting his weight. I've seen my wife suffer for years. If you think your grandmother's remedies can help, I'm willing to give it a try. A wave of murmurs followed. Voices that once held disdain now sounded curious. Encouraged, Linda drew on this momentum. Her heart soared as she realized that she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was igniting a spark in others, paving the way toward collective self-discovery. There was an undeniable energy coursing through the room, a sense of unity forming amidst the uncertainty. At the end of the meeting, as she gathered her materials, the health official approached her. I want to see more data backing what you've presented. If it holds merit, we may need to rethink our stance. Possibility blossomed within her. This was no longer merely about scrubbing solutions. It was about igniting a movement of healing and hope. While uncertainty still lay ahead, the foundation had shifted. Linda was no longer just a voice of the past. She was blazing a trail toward a future laden with authenticity and empowerment. As she left the office, she resolved to strengthen her knowledge, to dive deeper into research, and perhaps even venture into the world of advocacy. There was work to be done, and she was ready to face every challenge head-on. But as she approached her car, her heart raced not from triumph, but from the thought that someone had filed a complaint about her methods, casting a shadow over her newfound resolve. Just when she thought she was moving forward, a new obstacle loomed. The stakes had risen, and now the true battle lay ahead. What would she do next? Linda sank into the driver's seat of her car, staring blankly at the dashboard. The excitement of her earlier victory now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the unsettling weight of the complaint. The fear of losing the credibility she had fought so hard to gain gnawed at her insides. She gripped the steering wheel, feeling the tension tighten her muscles, her mind racing as she considered her next steps. What should she do? She could brush the complaint aside, assuming it was merely the last flailing attempt of those unwilling to change. But a small voice inside her insisted that she take it seriously. In the few moments between leaving the meeting and reaching her car, she had felt the flicker of hope transition into burning determination, a determination backed by the belief that her grandmother's remedies could make a difference. Pulling out her phone, she began to research more about the herbs and techniques she'd shared. The act of grounding herself back in her passion sparked motivation and illuminated her path forward. Linda had spent hours studying her grandmother's journal, treasuring every scrawled recipe and anecdote. But now it was time to dive deeper into the science behind the claims. If she wanted her voice to carry weight, she needed data and evidence, both to empower herself and to reassure the skeptical. She opened herself to the idea of collaboration. The mental image of people gathering, sharing stories, and exchanging ideas about health sparked a flicker of inspiration. Perhaps she could reach out to local universities or health practitioners willing to support her research with their expertise. This could be a turning point, a pivot from self-appointed advocate to a respected voice supported by rigorous inquiry. With newfound resolution, she began typing out a draft proposal for partnerships. Would they help her establish a research project to validate her intuitive remedies? Would they be willing to back her findings with clinical trials, presenting a blend of modern methods and ancient wisdom? There was little more rewarding than collaborating with others driven by the same goal of health and well-being. As she typed, every word felt as if it propelled her closer to establishing a legitimate platform. And while the thought of the complaint still lingered uncomfortably in her mind, she wore her focus like armor. It hadn't been easy to find her voice, and she certainly wasn't about to let it be silenced now. But an unsettling, gnawing sensation returned. Who had lodged the complaint? Why now? The competitive nature of her field meant there were many who thrived on dismissing alternative remedies. It wasn't just a bureaucratic issue, it was personal. There was always someone waiting in the wings to pounce on perceived weakness. After sending off her proposal to a few prospective collaborators, she took a deep breath and weighed her options. The exhilarating buzz of claiming her space in the world of health advocacy eclipsed the looming threat of hostility. What kind of narrative could she weave to counter this complaint? The notion of addressing it publicly in a forum sounded daunting. She needed to transform this challenge into an opportunity to showcase her journey and the benefits of her remedies. "I'm here to stay," she whispered to herself as she flipped open her laptop again, emboldened to draft a response. An internal thought sparked. If this complaint could be turned into a point of discussion, it might not only validate her work, but also bolster her mission. The time had come to face her doubts and take a stand. This was a critical juncture, a path that could unlock the next level of her development as a professional. And for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came her way. As she ventured deeper into her planning, her heart surged with determination. With each keystroke, she felt the walls of doubt around her begin to crumble. This was not just about old remedies. It was about honesty and an undeniable truth, the truth she was willing to fight for. But as she prepared to click send on her response to the complaint, she suddenly hesitated. What if the person behind it was someone more powerful than she had anticipated? What if this was a battle she wasn't prepared to undertake? With a sense of urgency amplifying in her chest, Linda leaned back in her chair, grappling with the weight of uncertainty. Would she stand strong, or was this the moment when she'd choose a different path altogether? Linda leaned back against her chair, the weight of the impending decision heavy on her shoulders. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, each second stretching into an eternity as the doubt clawed at her insides. This was more than just responding to a complaint. It was about defining her career. She had fought tirelessly to carve out a niche for herself, and she was not ready to let that hard-won ground slip away. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to refocus. Perhaps instead of viewing the complaint as a threat, it could serve as a catalyst for a more pronounced transformation in her career. This was her chance to solidify her position in an industry often skeptical of anything that didn't adhere to conventional wisdom. She refused to allow fear of the unknown to discourage her. With a clarity born from determination, she returned to the proposal she'd drafted, considering each of its components meticulously. Would partnering with established researchers lend legitimacy not just to her remedies, but to the vision she had for holistic health? The idea sparked excitement. There was a solid opportunity to transform anecdotal wisdom into empirical evidence. This could alter perceptions, not just for her, but for others like her who sought validation for unconventional approaches. But amid the optimism, a flicker of concern crept in. What if she presented her findings only for a figure much more prominent than she had anticipated to dismiss her efforts? How would she handle confrontation from influential skeptics who might undermine her work with a few well-placed words? Linda pushed those thoughts away. An adversary's voice didn't have to echo in her head. Instead, she envisioned something more powerful. A community of researchers validating her work, standing alongside her as a collective force for change. This was not an isolated battle. It was about creating a network of integrity around her mission. She envisioned herself walking into a room filled with academic peers, each ready to engage in discussion. The thought gave her strength. The hours spent poring over research, the relentless pursuit of knowledge, these were tools that would enable her to navigate any onslaught. She considered the personal stories she aimed to weave into her presentation, showcasing not just her findings, but the lives transformed by her approach. As she pieced together her narrative, a sudden realization struck her. What if she reached out to the individual behind the complaint? It would take courage, but what if she managed to invite an open dialogue? Engaging them could show her willingness to confront her critics while simultaneously providing space for understanding. Fueled by this new perspective, Linda began drafting a response to the complaint, framing it not as an attack, but as an inquiry, a call for dialogue around the potential of alternative remedies in conjunction with traditional methods. Taking a proactive stance rather than becoming defensive could also offer a glimpse into her confidence and professionalism. Just as her words began to flow, the phone buzzed on her desk, jolting her. It was an email notification from one of the universities she had reached out to. Her heart raced. Could this be the moment her proposal was being taken seriously? It brought both excitement and trepidation. What if they wanted to partner with her, but with strings attached that compromised her vision? With a pounding heart, she clicked open the email, a mix of hope and anxiety surging through her. What if this was the breakthrough she needed to elevate her voice above the fray? Or would it be another door closing, pushing her closer to a reckoning with her own limitations? Her eyes scanned the glowing screen, awaiting the response that could define her next chapter, an uncertain moment teetering between promise and peril. Would this be the alliance she sought, or would it further complicate her already tumultuous path? The email unfurled on the screen, and Linda's breath hitched as she read the words. "We are impressed with your innovative approach and would like to discuss potential collaboration." Her mind raced. This was the moment she had hoped for, yet it felt as if she had stepped off a cliff, flying into the unknown. The realization of what this partnership could yield both thrilled and terrified her. The university, a bastion of academic rigor, could provide her with the credibility she so desperately sought. But would their methods dilute her groundbreaking principles? Would she have to forsake her vision for their established protocols? Doubts crept in, whispering that this was a precarious step towards complicity rather than true change. She paused, the cursor blinking at the bottom of the screen, waiting for her reply. Every word she crafted could shape her future, equal parts excitement and dread swirling within her. Action was needed, and clarity eluded her like a shadow. Suddenly, she recalled the complaints, the fears that plagued those who resisted her ideas. They didn't trust the unconventional, and she recognized in their skepticism a reflection of her own uncertainties. Perhaps this was the way forward, embracing that discomfort she felt when faced with questions and opposition. Taking a deep breath, she pushed away the tumult in her head and focused her thoughts. Linda envisioned the potential of this collaboration, the validity it could bring, the resources to gather data that would empower her arguments. She could present her findings with the weight of peer-reviewed research behind her. That image surged forth, dispelling some of her hesitation. Responding directly to that inner voice of doubt, she typed out her thoughts, allowing her convictions to color her words. "I appreciate your interest in my proposal and would love to explore how our visions can align without sacrificing the core values of holistic health." Another worry pounced in her mind. What would this partnership want in return? Who would hold the power in the decision-making? This was becoming more than she had anticipated, and it was tricky territory indeed. She needed to ensure her stance remained firm and clear. To do that, she would have to prepare. As she crafted her response, her hands moved with conviction. They had to see her for what she truly represented. Linda decided to lay out her vision in a second email, expressing a desire not only for collaboration, but also for mutual respect of their differing approaches, even fostering an environment where both traditional and alternative health strategies could coexist and be tested side by side. The click of the send button echoed a sense of finality mixed with vulnerability. She allowed herself a moment to reflect. Each step taken felt like a dance on a tightrope, balancing the ambition to disrupt an industry entrenched in its norms with the fear of being rejected or invalidated. Then the phone buzzed again, pulling her gaze from the glowing screen. One more email notification, this one from the individual whose complaint had catalyzed her shift in perspective. Heart racing anew, she opened it cautiously. There it was, a request for dialogue, a drive toward juxtaposition and understanding. Linda's mind whirled. This was her chance, a chance not only to persuade one individual, but also to bolster her professional identity. Would she engage them in this discussion with the same fervor she had for the university? The implications loomed large, weighing heavily on her, but a determined resolve began to coalesce within her. She wouldn't shy away. This was an opportunity to assert her vision and refine it through critical engagement. With renewed clarity, Linda thought about how to approach this conversation. She could construct her arguments, bolster her evidence, and more importantly, lay the groundwork for a fruitful exchange. As she drafted her response, another thought struck her. What if this moment was more than just a defensive maneuver? What if it could initiate a ripple effect of change? Only now, as she faced the prospect of challenging an opponent directly, she realized the full scope of the journey ahead of her. The dialogues that could unfold, the potential for breakthroughs, shared insights, and the building of her legacy seized her imagination. Then, it happened. The rattle of her office door broke through her thoughts. Linda turned sharply, an anxious feeling knotting in her stomach. Who could that be? The moment felt momentous. The time had come to face not just the criticism, but also the realities of leading an evolving field. Linda's heart raced as she approached the door, the anticipation palpable. She opened it slowly, greeted by a figure she recognized from a recent symposium, a fellow researcher known for a confrontational approach to health sciences. Their last exchange had been contentious, and now here they stood on the precipice of a new interaction. "Linda," he said, his tone a blend of skepticism and curiosity, "we need to talk about your recent proposal." This was not how Linda had envisioned the dialogue, face to face, charged with an undercurrent of animosity rather than civility. Taking a breath, she stepped aside, gesturing him into her office, her mind racing with how to navigate this precarious terrain. "I didn't think you'd respond so quickly," she replied, opting for a slight feigned casualness, though inside she felt anything but relaxed. "Your ideas are controversial. Like it or not, they stir the pot. I'm concerned about the implications of your work," he challenged, crossing his arms. The words cut sharply, activating her defensive instincts. Linda clenched her fists, willing herself not to recoil. "It's precisely the pot that needs stirring," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Healthcare lacks diversity in thought, and my approach aims to change that." He raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "And at what cost? Have you considered how often these unconventional ideas are dismissed outright? You'll be labeled an outsider." Though anxiety gnawed at her, something in Linda lit up, a spark of determination ignited by the challenge. "I took that label years ago. I'm comfortable being seen as a disruptor if it means pushing forward strategies that can actually help people." His expression softened marginally. "So you believe this collaboration with the university can achieve that? That they won't enforce their conventions on you?" I hope to shape their conventions, not the other way around. She felt an unexpected rush of confidence. This isn't just about health, it's about redefining how we perceive healing. If I can bring credible research into the conversation, I'm convinced it will be worth it. For a moment, he looked contemplative. Perhaps he saw something in her conviction that made him reevaluate his stance. So you believe you can maintain your integrity in a space that thrives on conformity? Yes, she responded, the word ringing with newfound strength. And I believe it's my responsibility to ensure that integrity. If I buckle under the pressure, then I'll be just another cog in the wheel. The tension seemed to shift slightly, and Linda seized the moment. Would you be willing to explore these ideas with me, rather than seeking to undermine them? There's a rich dialogue to be had, and you wield significant influence in this field. He stared at her, weighing the raw, emotional appeal of her proposition against his years of skepticism. Silence stretched thin between them, broken only by the ticking of the clock on her desk. All right, he conceded finally. Let's see what dialogue we can generate, but don't think for a second I'll go easy on you. An unsteady breath escaped her lips, a release of the tension that had coiled tightly around her. I wouldn't expect anything less. With that, they began to discuss the nuances of her proposal, Linda's anticipation transforming into engaged fervor. As ideas flowed, she could feel the threads of her professional identity weaving together with the complexity of this relationship, challenging yet invigorating. What she had initially perceived as a potential annihilation of her stance was morphing into an opportunity for collaboration layered with promise. She began to realize that this dialogue might not only refine her arguments, but also deepen her understanding of the very principles she was advocating for. However, just as her thoughts began to shift toward the future, a jarring realization struck her. Would this man's influence extend to the university? Was he a gatekeeper she would have to navigate carefully? The growing complexity of their conversation highlighted the depth of the path ahead, one fraught with more twists and turns than she had anticipated. Linda understood that this collaboration could be both her stepping stone and her stumbling block. As they parted, her mind raced with strategies and outcomes. The enormity of her ambition was clearer than ever, to not just engage in dialogue, but to shift the paradigm of healthcare itself. Yet she recognized the shadows lurking. The risk of backlash was still present, looming dangerously close. The deeper she ventured into these dialogues, the more she felt like she was entering a battlefield. Each engagement would require her to challenge both others and herself on multiple fronts. Would she be prepared for the fire that awaited? And could her resolve withstand the scrutiny now more intense than ever? The tension of that distant horizon loomed ever nearer, and she couldn't shake the haunting question. Would her journey nurture growth or lead to her undoing? Linda sat at her desk, the remnants of a heated dialogue swirling in her mind. The encounter had peeled back layers of her professional persona, unveiling a vibrant, albeit vulnerable image of who she could become. Moments after her conversation, she reflected on her assertive stance. Would she be able to sustain this vigor as she entered the more bureaucratic gates of the university? The prospect filled her with equal parts excitement and dread. With her proposal still fresh in her thoughts, a subtle fire lit within her. The potential for collaboration felt invigorating, but cumbersome at the same time. What she had once viewed as a source of friction was beginning to morph into an intricate web of possibilities. Yet she couldn't ignore the gnawing worries about the repercussions this deal might entail. Linda opened her laptop, her fingers flying over the keys, pouring her thoughts onto the page. The more she articulated her ideas, the more confident she felt. The complexities were daunting, but within them lay opportunity, a chance to redefine the parameters of her field while still remaining true to herself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting her office with a warm hue, Linda paused to take a breath. How could she prepare for the inevitable pushback from those who championed status quo standards? The answer was not just in refining her research, but also in honing her capacity for assertive dialogue. Strengthening this resolve meant proactive engagement in difficult conversations. She knew that even in advocacy, discomfort was a catalyst for growth, leading to authentic connections. What might work to her advantage was her ability to reframe challenges into collaborative learning experiences. This realization struck a chord. She was not just fighting battles, but building bridges. She made a mental note to reach out to more colleagues, especially those who had once been viewed skeptically. If she could engage them in her vision, she might weave an intricate network of support around her as she headed into what she imagined would be a storm. As days turned into weeks, Linda meticulously crafted her proposal, embedding her research strategies within outreach efforts aimed at garnering diverse perspectives. Eventually, she organized a session where she could present her studies to colleagues who had varying viewpoints. The day arrived, and with it came anxiety, heavy and palpable. Linda stood at the head of the table, the respectful faces of her peers framed by sleek laptops and notepads. A part of her wanted to run, to hide from this new arena of influence, but another part held ground, determined to share her message. As her voice filled the room, she noticed facial expressions shift, some intrigued, others resistive. She steered the narrative toward understanding, inviting critiques but keeping the focus on shared goals, advancing care with innovative thinking. Discussions unfolded like layered tapestries, some threads wrinkled and knotted, others vibrant and flowing. But as the dialogue progressed and opinions clashed, skepticism reared its head. One seasoned colleague challenged her views bluntly, dismissing her aspirations with definitive authority. Linda's heart raced. This was the moment she had braced for. She took a breath, grounding herself. In that instant, the gathered eyes bore down on her, and she felt almost naked, yet resolute. "I appreciate your confidence in the conventional methods," she began, her voice carrying a calmness that contradicted the tumult inside. "But isn't innovation built on challenging norms?" The challenge, however, ignited not just a conversation, but friction. It demanded her to dig deeper into her reasoning, with her every word becoming a deliberate brushstroke on the canvas of perception. She leaned into that resistance, allowing the energy of the room to shift and provoke thought rather than retreat into defensiveness. The back and forth activated a dynamic she hadn't expected. Debate erupted, and Linda navigated each point, feeling emboldened by the genuine commitment from her peers to explore new frontiers. Just as she began to sense the tide turning, the hostility crystallized into a deeper question. If she were to flourish in this environment, would she indeed have to sacrifice parts of herself she held sacred? With a gust of clarity, Linda realized she was in the midst of navigating not just a professional landscape, but also a moral one. Every argument she encountered seemed to echo the larger conflict in her mind. How much was she willing to stretch her convictions for the sake of acceptance? As the meeting wrapped up, her heart hummed with unresolved tension. This wasn't only a battle for her proposal. It was a measure of her core values and how far she was willing to push against the grain. With newfound insight, she left the room, a determination swelling within her veins as the stakes had never felt higher. Linda stepped out, feeling the cold wind greet her as the shadows of doubt lurked behind, whispering insidiously. Could she rise to the occasion, or would she lose the very essence that led her to this moment? Questions lingered as she walked away, the crossroads of her identity more pronounced than ever. One thing was certain, the path was fraught with complexities she hadn't anticipated, yet within that uncertainty lay the raw potential for a revolutionary encounter. How strong was she truly, and would the fire she kindled keep her alight through the coming storms? In the days following the tense meeting, Linda's resolve to push her proposal gained both clarity and urgency. Each morning, as she walked to her office, she replayed the encounter, examining every challenge posed to her arguments, every subtle nod or disapproving glance. The skepticism she faced had stung. It challenged her belief in the transformative power of her ideas. Yet the aftermath also ignited a fire, one that propelled her into deeper contemplation about the implications of her project and her place within the academic landscape. With her colleagues' reactions echoing in her mind, Linda set to work on a strategic plan to reinforce her voice. She drafted a series of articles intended not only to outline her research, but to encourage critical dialogue about her findings. Rather than seeing her colleagues as adversaries, she began to recognize them as essential contributors to her narrative. Each dissenting voice represented an opportunity for collaboration, a chance to sharpen her understanding. As the weeks rolled on, Linda found herself drawn more into the analytical depths of her subject. The challenge had exposed hidden reservoirs of creativity within her. She began to question not only what she believed, but why. That demanding search for justification illuminated connections to her past experiences, those moments of fierce advocacy for care models she had previously brushed aside. One afternoon, she took a break from her writing and wandered through the university library, searching for inspiration. The tall, imposing shelves seemed to hum with energy, full of histories, theories, and untold stories, especially the ones that challenged the status quo. As she meandered, a title caught her eye: Revolutionizing Healthcare, the Power of Unconventional Thinking. Intrigued, she checked it out, feeling an insatiable curiosity welling inside her. That evening, engrossed in the book, she discovered case studies of professionals who had radically shifted practices in their fields. Their resilience mirrored her own burgeoning determination, revealing that they too had suffered skepticism and resistance. More than once, she jotted down notes, each sentence resonating with the cadence of her own convictions. Armed with these insights, Linda reached out to the colleagues she had once hesitated to engage. She invited them for coffee, framing the conversations around mutual interests rather than conflict. Her initial apprehensions began to dissolve, replaced by a growing excitement as she cultivated deeper connections. Each dialogue, whether charged or calm, helped her explore different aspects of her proposal and allowed her to refine her arguments in ways that felt organic and authentic. Yet, just as the momentum shifted in her favor, a wave of doubt washed over Linda. A thought surfaced. What if her resolve to carve her own path obscured her ability to listen and adapt? Each coffee conversation revealed the importance of flexibility, leading her to contemplate a refinement of her ideas. She needed to focus on integrating feedback instead of guarding her original premise as a fortress. But would that compromise her vision? The true test lay ahead. She planned a follow-up presentation, this time tailored to address the growing network she had established while harnessing their insights. It would be a demonstration of her commitment to both her vision and the collaborative spirit she had fostered. Yet, that familiar tension brewed inside. Would they embrace her revisions willingly, or would she open herself to a new level of scrutiny? With determination steadying her heartbeat, she prepared her materials, each slide a reflection of her personal and professional journey over the past weeks. The ambiguity remained, but beneath it, her moral compass glimmered as she recognized the broader purpose of her work. As the day of the presentation approached, the stakes felt monumental. She prepared not just to defend an idea, but to present a synthesis of perspectives that could bridge divides. Would her newly forged alliances propel her project forward, or would she once again face the hostility of traditionalists? The last flicker of daylight faded outside her window, and Linda sat in contemplative silence, caught between fear and excitement, just as the first tendrils of resolve sought to bind the two. The hour came when she would step back into the arena. Would she find strength in the very vulnerability she had fought to conceal? And while the culmination of these efforts offered promise, the impending presentation reflected a deeper truth. Her journey might not just redefine her career, but could ultimately transform the very fabric of her convictions. The moment of reckoning loomed on the horizon, and uncertainty danced hand in hand with determination. What awaited her on the other side would tell her not just how strong she could be, but who she truly was. Linda stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blouse, her reflection whispering fragments of confidence and insecurity in equal measure. The day had arrived, her follow-up presentation, a moment she had meticulously crafted from the ashes of doubt. Outside, the world buzzed with anticipation, but inside her, a tempest brewed. The stakes felt impossibly high. She was not merely advocating for a proposal anymore, but defending her very essence as an innovator. Her office teemed with her colleagues, the room a whirlwind of converging thoughts and palpable energy. As she looked around, she recognized familiar faces, the supportive and the skeptical alike. The swirling chatter intensified the gravity of her venture, yet also melted away the isolation she had once felt. The partnership forged through collaboration now stood as a testament to her evolving perspective. Linda took a deep breath, centering herself among the chaos. She had intertwined insight from her coffee meetings, stitching together their feedback just as an artist assembles a masterpiece. Each slide contained not only data and projections, but the voices of colleagues who once questioned her capabilities. This was no longer just her voice. It had transformed into a chorus of diverse opinions. With each word she spoke, Linda felt the weight of her journey so far. The initial tremor in her voice steadied into a resolute tone, underscoring her commitment to a new approach in healthcare. Change doesn't come only from the loudest voice. It grows from the seeds planted in dialogue, she declared, her gaze sweeping across the audience, lingering on those who had shown skepticism. They sat in anticipation, arms crossed, expressions unreadable. As she navigated her presentation, the feedback loop she had so carefully curated unspooled behind her in real time. Questions that initially intimidated her now sparked a fire in her, fueling her resolve to face each challenge head-on. The skeptics began to engage, their pensive expressions softening, revealing the nuance beneath their doubt. By the time she reached the final slides, she felt an electric charge in the room, alive with possibility and transformation. Yet as she concluded, an unexpected silence filled the room. Her heart raced, each second stretching into eternity. Were they digesting what she had shared, or were they trapped in skepticism once more? Just as the silence threatened to overwhelm her, a colleague raised his hand, his brow furrowed in thought. Linda, you've highlighted some compelling points about integrating feedback, but how do you see this approach working in larger, more traditional institutions resistant to change? His question was sharp, cutting into the fabric of her presentation, yet the vulnerability she had cultivated bolstered her resolve. Instead of shying away from the confrontation, she met his gaze squarely. That's a critical question, and one I've wrestled with as well. I believe it begins with demonstrating smaller wins, pilot programs that showcase the efficacy of these alternate models in settings that may feel resistant. It's about showing value first, then inviting integration. Responses began to flow, questions bouncing back to her, generating a rich dialogue that marked a significant shift. The atmosphere had transformed from one of skepticism into an arena for exploration, each voice respected, each inquiry contributing to the evolving narrative. As the session wrapped up, Linda caught snippets of conversations buzzing around her, colleagues discussing her ideas with newfound respect. It felt exhilarating, yet part of her remained in contemplation. Had her openness truly won them over, or were they merely being polite? In the final moments, as people began to disperse, Linda heard a voice behind her, one that had doubted her the most. "You've changed the narrative, Linda. I didn't expect to say this, but your approach might actually work." The compliment ignited a swell of pride within her, yet it also stoked the embers of introspection. Had she shot straight past questioning and ambivalence? Did winning over the skeptics clarify her convictions, or did it obfuscate the deeper inquiry into her ideas? As she left the room, her mind swirled, aware that this was not merely about acceptance, but perhaps a deeper awakening within herself. The balance between conviction and flexibility had become her fulcrum, and now she understood. This was only the beginning. Standing in the corridor, the next steps loomed ahead like the dusk filtering through the university windows. Where would this newfound openness lead her? Would she gather the courage to reach further, rekindling the very ideas that initially brought her to this arena? The path forward was shrouded in both promise and uncertainty, and as Linda walked on, she felt the weight of her journey shifting yet again. Transformative realization awaited just around the corner. With newfound resolve, Linda stepped into the sunlight the following day, her heart racing as she envisioned the future unfolding before her. The culmination of her efforts hadn't just earned respect, it had awakened a deeper awareness of her capabilities, illuminating the path toward transformative potential for herself and others. In the months that followed, she dedicated herself to establishing a legitimate framework for her research. Linda collaborated with universities and local health practitioners, initiating pilot programs that validated her grandmother's time-honored remedies through empirical research. Each data point gathered was a brick in the foundation of her credibility, dispelling doubt and strengthening her voice as an advocate for holistic health. As she walked into the university's research center for their quarterly review, Linda felt a surge of confidence. She had spent countless hours preparing her findings, each detail reflecting not just the success of her own efforts, but the shared aspirations of those who had joined her journey. Her colleagues, once skeptics, now shared in her vision, eager to discuss the impacts of the research they collaboratively made possible. At the presentation, she stood proud before a professional audience, minds expanded rather than confined by tradition. Instead of a solitary endeavor, this was a demonstration of unity through diversity. What we've achieved here extends beyond our individual perspectives. This is about evolving healthcare for all, she proclaimed, her words resonating deep within the hearts gathered. The data she shared was compelling. Rates of improvement in health metrics among participants using her grandmother's remedies were substantial. It wasn't merely anecdotal, it was scientific. The validation surged through her, kindling pride in how she had fused years of traditional knowledge with contemporary scientific inquiry. When an influential figure in the healthcare community unexpectedly approached her after, praising her impact and suggesting further collaboration on a national level, Linda's heart soared. "We need voices like yours to reshape this industry, to usher in a new era of care," he expressed earnestly. Recognition from a respected leader was beyond what she had envisioned, solidifying her place in this new world. As elation swept over her, an inner clarity emerged, sharpening her vision beyond the immediate successes. Linda realized she had transcended the mere role of an advocate. She was now a pioneer, shaping the conversation around health modalities and fostering acceptance of alternative treatments in institutions long dominated by conventional wisdom. Reflecting on her journey from the addict discovery to the validation she was now receiving, she recognized the transformation within herself. She had moved from marginalization to empowerment, from self-doubt into integration. Each challenge had pushed her further toward resilience and understanding that her ideas had value. With her work gaining momentum and new partnerships blossoming, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Linda was thriving, not just in her professional capacity, but also on a personal level, rediscovering joy and fulfillment in her mission to promote health through love, wisdom, and community. The forgotten relics of her past were now treasured allies in her fight, grounding her ideas in authenticity. She'd learned that it is through vulnerability and openness that she could challenge norms and make lasting change. Closing her laptop after a day of fruitful meetings, Linda felt a whirlwind of gratitude envelop her. What had initially felt like a solitary path had transformed into a vibrant tapestry woven with shared stories and collaborative victories. Her grandmother's legacy regained its rightful place in the narrative of health. It was time for her next steps. Exhausted but exhilarated, she committed to pen down her experiences, insights, and research in a book that would inspire others to blend the old with the new. Empowerment lay not just in having a voice, but in creating a platform that fueled dialogue, research, and hope for future generations. With her newfound clarity and resolve, she smiled at the reflection in the mirror once more. Linda was ready to embrace this new chapter, an advocate, an innovator, and a storyteller on a mission. Now, it's time for you to step into your own journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey of personal achievement and growth. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to make your impact felt. Don't wait even one more second to share the inspiration.